Get started. Move this out. I spent quite a few hours trying to understand this and looking at each one of your schedules, visiting with Miss Twist, visiting with Mrs. Martinson, and trying to get my head around what we have here before us. When I've looked at each one of your schedules, obviously they're all different and unique. But if I'm looking at the schedules correctly, they each have some unassigned time in them. Is that a fair statement?
I guess it depends on what some is. Like, I
Well,
think I have 10 minutes
I'm not
here and
defining.
there.
Well, actually, okay, I'll just walk through yours. What I've, at least the way I've interpreted the schedule, that in the morning, there's time from 8 to 8:30, 5 days a week. And there's time at the end of the day from 3 to 3:45, 5 days a week. And then there's one time where there's 20 minutes for something on a Thursday. And then on Tuesday, there's a 15-minute block that's not assigned.
We're not allowed to have any of our meetings during the school day. So
No.
those mornings or afternoons I reserve for meetings.
Well, okay. That's what I'm trying to get my head around. Does that mean you have a meeting every day?
Minimum of 4 times a week.
So it's not every day, so there is some unassigned time.
There could be.
Right. That's what I'm trying to understand. Because as I discussed last week, you know, the .43, I can't even do that. I need something that I can validate to the school board, that Vince can validate to the auditor, and I can work with those numbers.
In my schedule is mostly the same, but I have a lot of different meetings each week. And for instance, this particular week, I have 7 either testing or meetings. And so there will be 30 kids just this week alone that I have to cancel. So in those times that I maybe have 10 or a few minutes, is when I'm pulling those kids that I've canceled from other dates. So like, for instance, this week, today I have meetings all afternoon, and then I would maybe Thursday or Tuesday go in and pull those kids that I missed. And I brought the kids just from this week, March 7th through 11th, that I missed. So there are 30 that I have to make up, so I put any spare time, I would put those kids in those slots. So it may look like there may be a minute here or there, but really, all of those missed kids, that's missed IEP time, that's illegal. You know, you can't just not see those kids, so I try and pull them and fill in those spots.
And that's the conundrum that I have.
So I would say even if
I don't know some of those things.
Yeah.
You know, all I could work with was the information I had in front of me.
Yeah.
Trying to understand.
And that's why I'm providing you that information, just so you know that. So if there's, and the kids at ECC are there until 3:45, so I don't have like a 3 to 3:45. I'm pulling kids, or I'm in there when they're having their snack, but I'm with kids.
What does that mean in there when they're having snacks?
They have snack time and lunch time and breakfast time at ECC, and I can't pull kids during that time, so I'm in there sitting next to them or naming things that are on their plate. I'm asking them questions, but that's IEP minutes, that's skilled speech therapy services that I'm providing them.
Okay, because I didn't understand what it meant.
Yeah, so, and that's why I'm
I
here
thought
to.
maybe you were eating Oreos.
No, sure am not.
So that's what I need help with, if we're gonna navigate the 90 minutes. Because your days change, students are absent, and I need something that I can comfortably look at the school board and said, and look at them and tell them I'm comfortable that this is a fair assessment.
Could you explain to me what you mean navigate the 90 minutes?
Because that's what we're talking about is the prep time.
That's part of what we're talking about.
We're talking about the negotiated agreement.
Okay.
From 8 to 3:45.
Okay, but our grievance isn't just about the negotiated agreement.
But the only thing that can be dealt with in this room is from 8 to 3:45. Anything beyond 8 to 3:45 is not something that can be discussed. I have a negotiated agreement. that's
It's our
negotiated
understanding
between-
that you have the authority, you and Vince have the authority to offer or authorize an extended contract. And what we're doing and what we've asked for is an extended contract because last year there were 9 SLPs and this year there are 6. The numbers of speech students have not decreased. We are now covering those 9 positions among the 6 of us. That's pretty black and white.
That's true. I'm not debating that there's 2.6 less speech therapists. But in terms of an extended contract, just, what was it, 3 weeks ago, we met with the budget committee, 2 weeks ago, and asked permission from the budget committee to extend contracts. So extending contracts is not within our authority that I recall.
And that was a request for calendar days.
Yes.
This request doesn't, it references the opposite.
But what I'm trying to deal with is the prep time.
The caseload that we're carrying and the amount of paperwork that we're doing won't even come close to a prep time.
I understand that. But I don't have the authority to change this negotiated agreement and add something into it that's not in there. And just as an example, there have been instances in the 7 years since I've been here when the assistant superintendent and I sit down, and just for sake of an example, which I'm not saying that it's an accurate example, but the process is, we look at a grade level, just say for sake of discussion, it's grade 2, and we have 3 sections of 2nd grade. And because of the numbers, he recommends to me that we collapse them to 2 when they go to 3rd grade. We don't increase the salaries for those 2 teachers by 50% because we've eliminated 1 position.
I totally understand that. However, there will never be 55 students in one classroom at the elementary school.
I'm not debating that.
But on the
Because I
reverse,
agree.
if I may, on the reverse, if that grade, or if that classroom would increase one's specific classroom to such a large degree, you would hire a class size reduction teacher, correct?
If we could find one. I mean, we have, if we felt it was necessary because of increased enrollment, if we could find one, we would ask the budget committee for permission. And if the budget committee approved it, then we would try and hire somebody.
Has that ever taken place?
Our class size reduction, that's no longer the main focus of Title IIA. We have 3 within there, and each year we move to those classes where we've had to go from 3 sections to 4. But if we're going the opposite, it would be the reverse of that. So it wouldn't have anything to do with the class size reduction teacher.
You still have dollars going towards.
Yeah, I think so. I got your point. That's what's fine. That you were just saying we would reduce the class size, and I don't think she was specifically talking
Okay.
about a program.
Oh, okay. Because, well, that's a federal program.
Yeah. But
Okay.
your point is correct. And
We were told that there may be possibility of getting another learning disabilities teacher because of the increase.
well, that's something else that I want to discuss with you at some point in time. I want to try and navigate this to see if you can help me. If you can give me something that I can validate and that he can validate to the auditor, I can validate it to the school board, so that we can try and come to some type of resolution.
I guess I still don't understand how, I mean, that's, to me, that's so cut and dried that there are 3 positions as of today, as of when this was brought up at the very beginning of the school year, and ever since then, every day since, there have been 3 open positions. We had 9 last year, we have 6 this year, we've been covering those positions. If we have a student that's absent, and we happen to have an individual session, and we have a half an hour that we can work on an IEP, and that somehow cancels out this whole thing and says we're no longer covering those 2.6 positions, I mean, that's ludicrous. To me, there were 9 last year, there are 6 this year, there are 3 open positions, we're covering those positions. The 6 of us are covering those open positions. It just doesn't get any clearer than that. And you're right, our schedules are all different, but this isn't about our schedules, it's the fact that we're covering those open positions. And where she has those 5, times during the morning, she may have a meeting with her staff, she may have a meeting for an IEP, she may have a new eval meeting, who knows what's going on. You'd have to go literally day by day, every day of the school year to see what's happening during that time. There's also, again, with all of that paperwork, that doesn't mean it's prep time. She may be, probably not before school, but you may be testing a kid. We now have preschoolers coming in. I'll have a preschooler on Friday mornings now, starting at 8 o'clock. We have lots of meetings. My morning meetings start at 7:45. Our after-school meetings never end at 3:45. I've had maybe 2 that ended at 3:45. They almost always go way past that 3:45. So if we were gonna count that time past or before contract hours, that would get really hairy, if we're gonna clock every 10 minutes in that schedule, we should also be clocking all that time before and after the schedule. It doesn't make sense that we're gonna try and justify every 5 minutes in that day, and I did last time we met. I clocked that whole Friday for you, and it was ridiculous. If you looked at that at all, it was ridiculous. It was down to every 2 to 3 minutes. And every one of us could do that, and it would look the same. That's how our days look.
I understand that, and I understand that you have a large caseload. I haven't argued that case.
And if you're,
All I'm saying is that I need some help.
and if you're going to say that we need to fulfill those 3 positions between the hours of 8 and 3:45, and we actually did that, and we left at 3:45, we're out of compliance now on a lot of paperwork. We would be so out of compliance in terms of what needed to be done for the state that I think we could lose funding if we literally stuck by those hours.
What I'm saying is I don't have authority to do the .43. I don't have that authority.
You don't have the authority to offer an extended contract, is what you're saying?
They're not asking for an extended contract.
Yes, we were.
That's what they are asking for, is an extended
That's what our
contract,
grievance
Or
since they are
75
covering those
days.
positions.
75 calendar days? That isn't how I read it.
The 70, he asked for an extended contract, the 75 days would run concurrently with this because the 75 days
So you're not adding
equated.
75 days?
No,
No.
Okay, that just so I'm clear on that. You'd still have a 185-day contract,
Correct.
but you get paid for 185 plus 75. So they're not asking to extend the calendar. That's the only thing we
Okay.
can do. For example, with Sherry Twists, Dot asked to take it to the budget committee to consider adding another 5. And so those days will happen in June or in August when they need to do their work. But we didn't give her 5 days additional without her working 5 days.
And we have,
School
we've
days.
just been doing it all along.
As a collective group, we've decided that this job that we're doing right now is no longer manageable, and none of us are interested in continuing it. And so we've come here because we are out of ideas, and so we need for you guys to tell us what you can do to get us to stay here and keep doing this job. And that's the reason why we're here.
Well, and I'll answer that. Because I've learned some things, because obviously I'm not a speech therapist. And it's not something that I've dealt with and spent as much time as I have in the last week trying to understand. So, one of the things you might recall last week that I said, I was surprised that you do more than just speech problems, that you do kids understanding words, understanding how words fit in sentences, and I don't know what that's called. What is that called?
Language.
Language, that you do language issues. But it's also been explained to me, which I did not know until I started looking at it, that it's possible to cover that with the strategist. Is that right? Some of it, maybe not all of it,
Right.
but some of it could be. I haven't spoken with, well, no, we did talk about that one time, you know, that it's something maybe we need to take to the budget committee to see if we can find a strategist, but that's gonna be an uphill climb in itself. To try and take some of those language issues off of your plate and have them dealt with to give you some additional time. So I hope, Dana, that answers your question, that, you know, that's what, I'll get to you in a second. That's one thing that we're dealing with, that we're contemplating and we may do. The other thing is we're working on the Philippines thing, you know, and to see if that will get us some help. But that's a whole new road for us also, so it's a pretty big learning curve, because we haven't brought anybody from a foreign country that I recall. So those are the two things that we're looking at, plus we're continuing to advertise and continuing to try and find additional people.
And that's talking about next year, and we need to return to this year and what can be done for us this year in terms of compensation for the extra work that we're doing. Because that's our grievance.
Well, and I agree with that, but I was trying to address a question that I was asked.
And
So go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, my concern is the Early Childhood Center currently has a early child special educator strategist position open, and so far they haven't even had applicants for that I know of, so then to find someone else to provide more help to me, I think would be even
I'm not-
more challenging.
I'm not saying it's easy, I'm just
Yeah.
saying that I didn't know that was an option until the discussions that I've had in the last week.
I actually have a partial application that came in last week.
In my opinion, it's not a wonderful option because strategists have not been trained in a lot of things, even in terms of language. I work with a strategist every day. I know you guys work with strategists. They don't know what we know about language.
I think it's more the perspective too,
It's the what?
the perspective that they're coming at it from, whereas we're looking at more of the communication, although it's academic too, and there's probably more addressing academics.
I think to
Is
say-
there no solution, or do you have an answer for us as far as what we've requested for this year?
What I'm trying to do is what I'm telling you is I don't have authority to give 75 days of additional pay. I've also stated that provision is not even in the negotiated agreement. So I don't even know if the board can do that. Because the board does not have authority to negotiate with individuals. Mr. Smith can verify that the board has authority to negotiate with the DEA as the representative organization. So what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to find a different solution. And I'm asking for help. Because I don't know all of your individuals' schedules. And I've tried to illuminate the financial and legal obligations that he and I have if we get questioned on it. And I am honestly trying to find a solution here that will get us through this year, and also trying to find some avenues that will help us for next year. Mr. Smith?
I have a question for Mr. Reed. Who makes the decision to open up the positions? Like when you're going to hire 3 more speech paths, how does that decision come about? What's the trigger? You've talked about the trigger.
Yeah, well, it kind of varies, and Dot helped me out with this, but with speech path, at one point, I think 2 years ago, we had 1 position listed, and we had 2 applicants. I think that was when Ms. Callahan came, and we hired 2. And we hired 2, and we had to get budget committee authority for the second one. And so if it's been in the budget previously, to answer your question, then it's ongoing budget item unless it's pulled. And if we add to it, like the additional strategist that Mrs. Martinson requested, then Doug and I took that to the budget committee and said, if we can find one, do we have budget authority to hire one for next year? That never happens during the year. It's always for the next year. Well, I shouldn't say never, but it's pretty rare.
But what criteria do you use? Do you use student counts? Do you use caseloads?
It's
What
a variety
criteria?
of things.
Well, for example.
Well, I can answer one.
Okay.
In the case where we hired 2 speech therapists instead of 1, we knew that we had an impending resignation coming up or retirement. And we knew that speech therapists were a rare commodity. And so we wanted to get them on the roster in hopes that they would stay and have some sustainability. I mean, that was just I don't know
That
how
was
to
a-
phrase it.
Thinking to the future
Yeah.
move, basically.
Well, and part of that was when the laws changed on who could act as SLPs, like those that didn't have their masters, when they were grandfathered out over time, right?
Well,
I mean,
they retired,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, we didn't have anybody that we had to let go. They-
Another example I would be like with kindergarten for next year, we're tracking toward 325 students. And so Doug and I asked budget authority to add a 16th section of kindergarten. So sometimes it's just numbers. I mean, it's a variety of things that go into budgetary requests.
What was it in this case? With the three positions that are pending, was it numbers or?
Actually, it's 2.6 that are in the budget.
Okay,
And those are just holdovers from, I mean, we're advertising for 3, but in the budget, there are 2.6, which would be those that left, because Michelle is still 0.2. She wasn't a 1.0 cut.
so the caseload must be there, or you would have turned that loose. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say so.
And the budget must be there then too, if you plan for these speech language pathologists.
Yeah, it's it's a continuation from this year.
Well, this has been going on, as you know, since before school started, so we would like to have our answer in 8 days to our request. We've discussed it before we
You're the
met today.
spokesperson for the group?
Well, we can talk if you'd like and have you come back in, but we did discuss it before we met.
Okay. You'll have your answer in 8 days. And I just need to clarify a couple of things. Mr. Smith, can you please explain for the group what the role of you and Ms. Mayer is in this conversation?
I'm head of the grievance committee.
Grievance committee for the DEA?
Yes,
President of the DEA,
So you're here representing the DEA?
I'm here in support of my comrades and fellow people.
Okay. Approximately a year ago, it was made clear by Mr. Geierman that the DEA can only represent teachers. That was verified by by Judge Greenwood in his decision that the North Dakota Century Code is clear, that the only people who can be represented by the DEA are teachers. Teachers in North Dakota must be licensed by ESPB. There's one individual in this room who does not have a license through ESPB. I'm stating very clearly for the record that the school district does not recognize the DEA as a representative organization for that individual.
According to the grievance, am I allowed to, the grievance procedure, am I allowed to have someone come in with me?
All I'm saying is that the district will not recognize the DEA as a representative organization for people who do not have a license from the Education Standards and Practices Board. I will get you an answer to your question, hopefully this week.
Okay.
Thank you all.